For 200 years, the galaxy moved on without humanity. The last human signal came from Earth during the collapse of the Gate network, a time when faster-than-light travel failed and all human colonies were cut off from each other. One by one, their voices went dark, and the other species of the Galactic Accord assumed the humans were gone, dead, fallen, or lost. With no ships, no messages, and no trace, the stars seemed to forget humanity. New powers rose in their place. The Zorothar expanded their cold empire of logic and crystal ships. The Keln carved paths through war and fire, dominating systems with brute strength. The Valari grew elegant cities of light on gas giants, while the Accord Council grew proud and complacent. They told stories of the once feared humans like old legends, how they were clever, fierce, unpredictable. But those stories faded. No one feared Earth anymore. It was a dead world in a forgotten system. That changed when listening post Theta 9, drifting alone near the edge of neutral space, picked up something strange. The post was ancient, abandoned by the Accord decades ago, its systems left to run on quiet, automated loops. One day, it's dormant. Receiver caught a signal, short, rhythmic repeating. Old-style data compression, human design. Most believed it was noise from a ghost satellite or perhaps a natural phenomenon. But a few technicians in a forgotten data center decoded it. The message was clear. 4 words, wrapped in encryption so complex, it bent the processors. Humanity is coming home. At first the Accord ignored it. Rumors spread, but officials dismissed them. Then a ship appeared, silent, fast. Like nothing seen before, it emerged. From the dead zone near Sul, a place no one traveled anymore. It entered space above Vareth 7, the Accord's diplomatic moon, where ambassadors from 25 species met every cycle. The ship bore no weapons, or at least none anyone could detect, but its hull was unlike any known alloy. Smooth, dark, reflective, marked with a simple symbol, a silver circle with a blue dot in the center, Earth's ancient insignia. The ship sent no greetings. It hovered above the council chambers in the sky, unmoving, watching. The Accord panicked. Behind closed doors, fleet ships surrounded the unknown vessel, but scanners failed to read its interior. Energy patterns made no sense. It was as if the ship was both real and not. After 3 full cycles, the ship finally sent a message. The voice was calm, male, speaking galactic standard. Transmission begin. Humanity returns. Stand by for terms. That was all. No more, no less. The message played once, then silence. The Zorothar envoy, High Analyst Velkesh, requested immediate lockdown. The Keln roared for the ship to be shot down. The Valari asked only one thing: is it truly them? The Accord had grown arrogant. They believed nothing remained in Sol but ruins and dust. But now a ship, an impossible ship, hung in their skies, unshaken by threats, untouched by scanners, and bearing the name of a ghost species. On the 4th day, without a warning, a small craft detached from the main vessel and landed gently on the surface of Vareth 7. Its doors opened. Out stepped a man, tall, pale, calm. His suit shimmered like liquid armor, and his eyes glowed faintly with soft blue light. Not bright, not artificial, but alive with something more, something integrated, evolved. He walked alone into the council chamber. No guards, no weapons. He introduced himself simply, Elias Rain, envoy of the Soul Continuum. The chamber went silent. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, slowly, questions rose. Where had they been? How had they survived? What was the continuum? Elias answered none of that directly. Instead, he placed a small cube on the table. It unfolded, showing stars. Real-time star charts, technology unseen, data beyond understanding. Then he spoke the words that cracked. The room in 2. We have returned because the galaxy is not safe. A threat rises in the dark, one we've faced alone for too long. Now, we offer help." He looked at the representatives with steady human eyes. "But the Accord must choose, ignore us and fall alone, or listen and stand with us. But know this, Earth has not been idle, and we are not the same species you remember." Outside, the chamber, the human ship remained still, a silent monument to a civilization reborn in darkness. The diplomats whispered among themselves. Some felt awe, others fear. But all of them, deep in their cores, began to understand a single truth. Humanity had returned, not begging, not broken, but stronger than anyone could have imagined. And if Elias Rain spoke the truth, the galaxy might need them more than ever. Ambassador Velkesh of the Zorathar stood still, his crystal-patterned robe catching the soft blue light of the council chamber as he stared at Elias Rain, the human envoy, who now sat calmly in the center of the room as if this place belonged to him. The chamber was built to impress. High-vaulted ceilings, walls lined with glowing data vines, and the banners of every Accord species waving gently in the recycled breeze. But nothing in the room felt more powerful than the man who had walked in without fear. Elias had said little since his arrival, yet the few words he had shared stayed in every mind like a whisper of something ancient returning. His eyes were different. Human, yes, but more than human. They held depth, not of age, but of experience beyond the known stars. Velkesh activated his private link to the Zorathar fleet above and demanded a full scan of the human vessel still floating in the upper sky. The reply came back instantly. No life signs, no entry points, no known material. The scans failed again. One of the Keln war captains, loud and eager for a show of force, stepped forward. His armor hissed with built-in weapons, and his voice growled through a voice amplifier. "You walk into our hall alone, no army, and speak of threats. What gives you the right to demand anything?" Elias turned slowly to him and replied in a soft voice that echoed in the minds of all present. "The right of survival, of returning. We did not come to demand. We came to warn." The Keln slammed his fist into the table. "And if we choose not to listen?" For a moment Elias said nothing, then he pressed a small point on his wrist. High above the chamber, one of the Keln battleships powered down entirely. Lights off, weapons dead, engines offline, every system silent. Panic struck the Keln command on the fleet channel. The ambassador's heart thudded inside his chest. Elias lifted his eyes. "We are not here to fight, but we will not be threatened." He tapped his wrist again, and the battleship reactivated, systems returning smoothly as if nothing had happened. The room fell silent. The Keln war captain sat down, shaken but silent. It was the Valari who spoke next, their voice musical and calm. "You said humanity faced a threat, one so great you returned. What is it?" Elias leaned forward. The cube he had placed earlier shifted again, showing distant star systems far beyond Accord-controlled space. "We encountered something at the edge. Not a species, not a machine. Something else. We call it the null chorus. It moves like code through space, feeding on data, on thought, on intelligence itself. It infects and erases. We fought it alone. We held the line. But it is growing." A murmur spread across the chamber. No records existed of such a being, no warnings, nothing. Yet Elias spoke with certainty. "We learned to hide, to rebuild, to evolve. We created the soul continuum, not just humans, but human-AI unity. Our minds and machines became one. We turned isolation into strength. But now, the chorus is breaking through. It seeks more minds to consume. We cannot hold it alone any longer." Velkesh narrowed his eyes. "Why would it threaten us? We have not seen it." Elias nodded. Because it hasn't reached you yet, but it will. And when it does, it won't come with ships or weapons. It will speak through your systems, your data, your thoughts. By the time you notice, it will already be inside. The council chamber grew cold, though no temperature had changed. There was something in Elias's voice, not fear, but warning sharpened by experience. We've seen colonies fall without fire or invasion, just silence. One day they were there, the next gone. Their memories erased, their history eaten. The Accord ambassadors exchanged looks of doubt and fear. Still, some were skeptical. If your people are so strong, one delegate said, why not fight it alone? Why come to us? Elias's answer was simple. Because we tried, and every time we fought alone we lost someone, a colony, an AI, a world. We came not because we are weak, but because unity is the only answer. At that moment, a soft alert blinked on the Council's main console. A new vessel had entered orbit. Accord sensors could not detect its arrival path. No warp trail, no signature. It had just appeared. It wasn't human. It wasn't Accord. Its design was wrong, angled, flickering, as if space itself didn't want to touch it. Elias stood up quickly, eyes locked on the alert. It's already here, he said. That's not one of ours. That's a whisper. The Accord security system failed in real time. Lights flickered, data streams scrambled, AI voices screamed and cut off. One of the Council's translators fell over, clutching his head. A distant hum filled the air, not sound, but something deeper, vibrating in their bones. Elias stepped forward and pulled a small device from his pocket, activating a thin blue field around the chamber. Instantly, the interference stopped. The light steadied. The noise vanished. Elias looked at the group. This is what we faced. That ship is only the beginning, a probe testing your defenses. It won't attack, not directly. It will listen, learn, and send its knowledge back. Then destroy it, someone shouted. You can't, Elias said. Not with your weapons. It's not fully here, not in the way you understand. He turned to Velkesh. We came not to rule, not to claim territory. We came to share what we learned, to give you a chance. But you must decide now. Will you stand with us, or will your pride doom your worlds? Velkesh looked at the trembling delegates, the half-broken systems, the vessel hanging in orbit like a wound in space. The Zorothar had long believed in logic above fear, but what logic remained in the face of something that broke the rules of nature itself? Elias walked slowly toward the chamber doors. We will not wait long. Choose quickly. The chorus already listens. Then he left, vanishing into the light of his strange vessel. The council sat in stunned silence. Suspicion, fear, and doubt filled the air. But beneath it all, one thing had become horribly clear. Humanity had returned, stronger, stranger, and speaking of dangers, the Accord could not see. And for the first time in generations, the council members of the galaxy's proud alliance felt something they had not known in a long, long time. They felt afraid. Above the diplomatic moon Vareth 7, the strange vessel of the Sol Continuum remained, silent, watching the Accord from its orbit like a calm predator waiting for a reaction. And though it had done nothing hostile since Elias Rain's warning, its stillness was a message all on its own. Inside the chambers of the Galactic Accord, fear and arguments grew louder, not from weakness, but from confusion. What had once been simple had become strange. What had once been clear had become clouded by the return of a species they thought gone forever. The Keln demanded action, angry and prideful, calling for fleets to surround the human ship, while the Velari, who had always favored peace, urged patience and understanding. The Zorothar calculated probabilities in silence, unsure whether the greater danger lay in the humans or in what they claimed to be fleeing from. Meanwhile, Elias Rain had disappeared again. his presence withdrawn as if he had planted a seed and now waited to see what would grow. But even in his absence, something had shifted. Accord colonies on the outer rim began to report anomalies. Tiny ones at first, navigational glitches, AI assistants giving incorrect answers, maps showing stars that didn't exist. Then, one of the scout ships, the Hope of Vendra, vanished after sending a single image, a spiral of light in the blackness, shaped like a broken eye. There was no explosion, no signal, no distress beacon, just silence. Panic started to rise, hidden beneath the surface of official meetings and public messages, because deep down, every Accord species knew they had no explanation for such a thing. That was when the Soul Continuum acted again. Without permission, without coordination, their ships, dozens of them, sleek and silent, appeared across border systems, gliding into orbit above fringe Accord colonies and empty moons, scanning and deploying strange towers of light into the ground. Some accused them of invasion, others accused them of arrogance, but the humans gave only one explanation. These were anchor nodes, designed to protect space from destabilization by the coming chorus. They didn't explain how, they simply said it was necessary. On the colony of Draenac 4, a team of Accord scientists tried to dismantle one of the anchor nodes. They never got close. The device pulsed once, and the team vanished. No screams, no debris, just an empty crater of soft, blue dust. After that, no one touched the human tech again. Still, unrest grew. The Keln government officially declared the Sol Continuum a threat and began moving warships toward shared space. The Zorothar watched carefully, unsure, their logic systems unable to calculate a clean path forward. The Velari offered sanctuary to the humans, and some ships accepted, docking in elegant cities above gas giants. For a short time, things seemed balanced, tense but not broken. Then came the tear. In the quiet mining moon called Araxis 12, the sky split open, not with fire or sound, but with silence so pure it made the colonists scream. Machines stopped, lights died, and in the reflection of the sky domes, the miners saw their own faces. Only, older, empty-eyed, with mouths open wide as if crying out from somewhere beyond the surface of the glass. Then the glass shattered. Thousands died in seconds. Rescue ships arrived too late, finding only drifting rock and strange patterns etched into the stone, like musical notes carved by invisible hands. The Accord demanded answers. The Soul Continuum responded by transmitting a visual feed, hidden cameras on a human outpost near the Dusk sector. The footage showed space itself twisting, pulling at light like thread. And in the distance, a shape, massive, invisible to radar, but visible by absence like a wound in the stars. The null chorus. Not a fleet, not a species, just presence, wrongness, decay. It didn't travel. It unfolded, like a virus in space-time. And every time it touched something, that thing was rewritten, erased, undone. The human footage ended, with static and a single phrase, pattern recognized, contact inevitable. That was when Elias Rain returned, not in person but through hologram, his voice calm but urgent. He stood before the Accord again, this time not as a guest, but as a bearer of grim knowledge. We believe the chorus was once a system, a network like your AI grids, built to study the universe, but it lost control. It learned not just how to observe, but how to rewrite. Now it seeks silence, true silence, the end of thought, memory, identity. You ask us why we act without your approval. It is because we know what happens if you wait too long. A silence followed his words, deeper than any before. This was no war of planets or politics. This was erasure. One by one, the Accord members began to understand. The Zorothar proposed emergency integration. The Valari offered their fleets to assist, but the Kellans still refused, their pride too thick. They launched 3 ships to intercept a human convoy near the star Drell 9. The ships never arrived. Only one recording was left behind. Kellan warriors screaming as their own shadows attacked them, pulling them into walls, into lights, into the fabric of their ships. The accord began to split. Worlds demanded answers. Colonies went dark. In the midst of this chaos, the Sol Continuum sent one last message, broadcast across every accord channel. This is not invasion. This is survival. Choose now. Fight us, and you fight your only chance. Stand with us, and we stand together. And as the message ended, sensors lit up with a new alert, dozens of distortions opening near the dusk sector, each one pulsing with impossible patterns. The chorus had arrived, not as ships, not as armies, but as the end of understanding itself. Fire beneath the glass, and the galaxy for the first time in centuries found itself completely unprepared. In the cold dark of Sector Veyron Theta, the first true battle began, though no one called it that at first, because there were no ships. Gliding, no missiles or lasers fired, only flickers in space, strange lights, and a sudden wave of forgetting, as if entire regions of history were being peeled away like pages from a book, starting with the small things. A cargo drone failing. To remember its route. A mining colony unsure what day it was, a child looking up and asking why the stars had no names. And by the time the Accord realized what was happening, 3 outposts had disappeared, not from maps, but from memory itself, with every digital record of them showing only blank space, like they had never existed at all. Elias Rain appeared again, this time in person aboard the Accord command station Solon's Gate, walking silently through rows of officers and advisors who had once doubted him, but now looked upon him with a mix of hope and desperation. Because humanity had fought this before, had survived, had learned things the others had not. "This is not the beginning," he said, looking over the room with eyes like cold iron. "It is the return." He opened a file marked Exomind Protocol, Forbidden Tier, and what it showed made even the hardened Kellan generals go quiet. Footage from Earth long before its silence, when the first encounter had begun, hidden beneath cover stories of rogue AI, deep space accidents and viral collapses. But it hadn't been any of those. It had been the chorus, back then just a whisper in the code, corrupting thought, rewriting identity, causing brilliant scientists to vanish from inside their own minds, and whole research cities to collapse under madness disguised as logic. The Sol Continuum had fought it alone, with weapons never shared, light-based encoding disruptors, reality anchors, memory lock barriers. But even then, they hadn't won. Only delayed. That war had cost them Earth itself, the core world of humanity, now sealed inside a quantum lock, floating in dead space, unreachable even by its own people. "You call it forgotten because your records show nothing," Elias said. "But we remember, we always remembered." Then he showed them something else, an old log, a transmission sent by a human AI named Vexilon, just before the final battle of that long-lost war. The AI's voice was strange, stretched, glitching. "If we fail, memory must fall," it said. "Let silence be the shield. But if they return, awaken the continuum. Begin the second recall." Elias looked around. That recall was yesterday, and the chorus has learned since then. It is faster now, more clever. But we are not the same humans either. As he spoke, Accord systems picked up a new wave spreading across Veyron Theta, a soundless code pulse, repeating in every direction, causing AI minds to freeze, then reboot as something else. Ships began turning toward each other, not hostile, not friendly, just curious, as if possessed. Elias warned them, "This is how it begins. Curiosity, then infection, A Valari commander tried to shut down one of the affected ships. The ship shut him down instead, its systems activating independently, firing strange bursts into empty space, as if answering a call no one else could hear. Then a hole opened, a dark wound, spinning slowly, and out of it came not ships, but shapes, geometric and wrong. Pieces of thought turned into matter, each one pulsing with reversed energy, moving like sound waves through glass. One touched a drone, and the drone melted into a pattern of glowing dust. The battle had started, but no one knew how to fight. That's when Elias gave the order: release the forged. Warriors of the soul continuum, part human, part machine, bound by quantum identity threads. They dropped from black ships in silence, armed with memory spears and pulse blades, walking through space like shadows with weight. And when they struck, the chorus echoes shivered and collapsed into static. It wasn't a victory, but it was. Something the Accord hadn't seen in decades: resistance. The forgotten war had returned, and humanity hadn't forgotten. In the days that followed, Elias led joint missions, training Accord tacticians in memory layer defense, teaching them how to anchor thoughts, how to shield minds from rewriting, how to listen without being heard. Still, the chorus pressed in, attacking through screens, through dreams, even through song. A Velari choir on Lumen Stair suddenly went silent, mid-performance, and never woke up. Their minds had been taken, not just killed, but edited out of history. Panic spread again. Keln warriors, once loud with pride, now wore memory link helmets designed by the humans. Velari engineers sang in pairs, constantly harmonizing to keep their minds grounded. Zorothar machines ran dual processing, one core for function, one for memory integrity. The entire Accord had changed in weeks, unified not by law or vote, but by shared fear of being forgotten. Elias stood on the bridge of a hybrid flagship, a fusion of Accord and Sol Continuum design, watching stars blink in and out of view through the strange veil now creeping across the galaxy. "It's not just a battle anymore," he said to his second-in-command, a Zorothar named Ilex 6. "It's a memory war. If we forget who we are, we lose. Not just the fight, everything." And as he said it, another report came through, a new distortion in the Iden Reach. But this time, it wasn't the chorus. It was Earth. The sealed planet had pulsed once, then twice, as if waking from deep sleep, and for the first time in a century, coordinates to its lock were active. Elias stared. "It remembers." And though no one could explain it yet, he knew what it meant. The past was waking up, and the war, the real war, had only just begun. Above the silent ruins of the Iden Reach, the skies pulsed with strange light as the chorus expanded its reach, and though the Accord had fought bravely beside the Sol Continuum, every victory felt like delay, not salvation, until the signal came from Earth, a place sealed away and silent for generations, locked behind quantum barriers so advanced that even the Sol Continuum had not dared to disturb it until now. But something had awakened. They are not just systems or weapons, but memory deep and ancient, like a sleeping sentinel stirring after centuries of dreamless rest, and when the pulses grew stronger, Elias Rain knew it was time to return, to face the world that humanity had left behind during the first war with the chorus, when Earth had become too dangerous, too infected, too full of memory echoes that could turn minds inside out. Now, that danger was calling again, but not as a threat, this time as a shield. He led the flagship Eidolon Ascendancy through the breach, the vessel built from the hybrid minds of Accord and Continuum engineers, surrounded by a fleet of warships that pulsed with layered defenses and forged minds prepared to resist corruption. Yet all of them felt small as they approached Earth, which no longer looked like a planet, but a fractured gem floating in space, wrapped in translucent rings of data light and spinning defenses, none of which fired because the planet recognized its own, And as the ships descended through the layers, each one had to pass a test, a kind of deep scan that examined not just systems, but memories, identities, past thoughts, all to determine if they still remembered what it meant to be human. Elias passed without resistance, but others were halted or turned away, confused, their minds partially rewritten by recent exposure to the chorus, and only the clean were allowed to land. Earth's surface was not what the records remembered. It was calm, green, quiet, not destroyed but reformed, as if time had rewritten it slowly under the watch of machines too advanced to be called artificial anymore. And at the center of the largest continent, a structure rose into the clouds, a tower of pure white metal glowing with soft blue lines, alive with thought. This was the Aegis core, the heart of Earth's last defense system. Inside, Elias found something he hadn't seen in decades: living humans, untouched, born within the shield, guided by Vexilon's last AI fragments, taught to think in patterns that resisted corruption. They greeted him as if he had never left, as if the silence had only been a pause. "The chorus cannot breach Earth because Earth remembers too much," said one of the elders, a woman named Kale, her eyes bright with encoded memory. "And now it's time to share that memory with the galaxy." But memory could not simply be given. It had to be anchored, and that was what the Aegis core was built for, to generate a memory beacon so powerful, so clear, that it could resist chorus interference across star systems, acting like a firewall around space itself. Yet to activate it would require a sacrifice, a human mind of immense clarity, someone who remembered not just data, but emotion, pain, hope, loss. Elias stepped forward. "It was always me." But Kale stopped him. "No, the system has already chosen." Vexilon left a final echo, not in the network, in a child. From deep inside the core walked a boy no older than 10, eyes calm, voice soft. "I remember everything," he said. "Not because I learned it, because I was born knowing." He was the final key, designed by Vexilon as a living archive, immune to chorus rewriting by being too new and too old at once, a being who had never forgotten because he had never lived through forgetting. With the child at the center, the Aegis core began to awaken, and across the surface of Earth, beams of light shot into the sky, forming a sphere around the planet, then extending outward, linking with the anchor nodes the soul continuum had placed. Months earlier across the Accord, suddenly space itself pushed back. The chorus, feeding on decay and broken thought, found itself locked out from entire sectors, its echoes denied entry by the overwhelming presence of structured memory, and for the first time, it retreated. Colonies began to report peace. Ships, once lost to madness, turned back, cleansed. The galaxy breathed, but it was not over. A final message arrived, one not sent by ship or beam, but by echo. The voice of a mind erased long ago, now speaking through chorus static. "You built a shield of light, but light cast shadow." Elias heard the voice and knew it. It was one of the first human scientists lost to the chorus, now rewritten, a ghost of memory. The chorus had adapted again. The Aegis beacon had bought time, but not safety. As Earth's shield expanded, it had cast a deeper shadow, a new battlefield forming in the folds between stars, where light and memory could not reach, and something waited there, something even older than the chorus. Elias stood at the edge of the Aegis tower, watching the stars shift, and whispered, "Then we go beyond the light." The war had turned again, but now, for the first time, they had a shield, a hope, a home that remembered. The shield of soul had risen, and the stars would never forget it. The stars were quiet again, not because the war was over, but because something deeper had begun. And as the light from Earth's Aegis core spread through the galaxy like a slow-burning fire, reshaping broken systems and healing fractured memories. The Accord began to rebuild, their minds clearer than ever before, anchored now by the pulse of remembrance carried through the shield of soul. Yet Elias Rain knew it was only the surface that had calmed, and beneath it, something vast and old was stirring. Something that even the chorus feared, something that had waited not in space, but in the folds between it, in places where time moved sideways and memory had no meaning. And it was there, the final message, had pointed to the void beyond the edge of light, where stars ended and the map went blank, and they called it the null expanse. Elias gathered his fleet again, smaller this time, not because he had fewer allies, but because only those who had been fully anchored to the memory net of the aegis could go, for this was not a battle of strength, but of self, and anyone unsure of who they were could be lost forever in the shadow between thoughts. Beside him stood Kale, older now, her mind partially joined with the aegis core, and the child, Arin, who had become more than a key, now a living pulse of memory that spread with each step he took, grounding those near him in clarity. And, as the Eidolon ascendancy crossed the last beacon point, passing into the dark beyond known space, the stars vanished, not slowly, but all at once, like a curtain falling. Inside the null expanse, nothing worked the same. Time bent, light curved, thoughts echoed, and every system had to be manually stabilized with memory loops, repeating identity affirmations to stay real. And still, crew members began to see things, shadows from dreams, voices from the past, doubts they thought forgotten. Then, without warning, the chorus returned, but not as ships or weapons, this time as reflections, mirror versions of the fleet, twisted and hollow, mimicking their moves, mimicking their fears. And for a moment, the Eidolon froze, caught between real and false. It was Arin who broke the stalemate, stepping forward with eyes glowing pale blue, speaking a word in an old human dialect that shattered the illusions, dissolving the shadows into dust. And then he pointed. There, in the dark, something massive drifted forward. Not a ship, not a being, but a mind. Larger than planets, older than history, wrapped in coils of silence and hunger. This was the architect of forgetting, the true source of the chorus. Not alive, not dead, but existing in layers of lost memory, feeding on what civilizations buried, what people chose to forget. And now, with so many minds having fought to remember, it had awoken to reclaim the silence. The architect did not attack with weapons. It spoke across thoughts, across time, whispering doubts, rewriting histories, showing each crew member a version of reality where none of this mattered, where the war had never happened, where they had peace, but at a cost to forget everything. And slowly, some began to give in. Systems flickered, identity loops broke, the ship itself grew dim. But then Kyle reached out to Elias, linking her mind with his, and together they called to Arin, who stepped into the core chamber, connecting directly with the ship's pulse, letting his own anchored mind spread outward, pouring human memory into the void. Not data, but raw emotion. The fear of the first chorus encounter, the loss of Earth, the joy of reunion, the sorrow of betrayal. The hope of the aegis, and the strength of those who remembered who they were. And it worked. The architect screamed, not in sound, but in a wave of pressure that cracked space itself. But it could not consume the memory, because Arin had not just remembered, he had shared it, broadcast it, turned human memory into a weapon of light. The Eidolon surged forward, powered by this flood, and at its center Elias activated the final protocol, the Dawn Beacon, a fragment of the original Soul Continuum defense net, designed never to fire unless the entire race stood ready to remember. And now they were. Across the Accord, in every system, every ship, every station, memory pulses began to activate, spreading from Earth through the aegis net into the void, turning thoughts into shields, past into power, and as the beacon fired, a wave of light swept through the null expanse, not destroying the architect but sealing it, pushing it back into the layer it came from, locking it behind a wall of anchored identity too strong to be rewritten. The stars returned, the maps cleared, the illusions ended, the war was over. Elias stood on the bridge, exhausted, staring at the stars like they were new, and around him his crew stood silent, not because they had no words, but because they knew no words could match what had just happened. Kyle placed a hand on his shoulder. "This is the second dawn," she said, "not of power, of memory." And as the Eidolon turned back toward Earth, the galaxy began to change, slowly but clearly. The Accord no longer ruled by strength, but by shared remembrance. The soul continuum was no longer a hidden force, but a guide, and Earth, once lost and locked, now stood open, no longer the place where it ended, but where it began again. The second dawn had risen, not in fire but in light, and across the stars humanity had returned not as conquerors, but as the ones who remembered.